the Constitution created these structures to facilitate a seamless process for delivery of services to the people of Kenya. Executive authority of the government of Kenya is exercised at two levels. Executive authority of the government of Kenya, not the governments of Kenya. Executive authority of one government of Kenya is exercised in two levels: national level, national government level, and county governments level. So the Constitution goes on to say in Article 6.2 that this exercise of executive authority between the two levels, or by the two levels, will be processed, will be canvassed, will be executed through a process of mutual respect, consultations, and cooperation, not through conflict and competition. Yeah? Anybody perpetuating conflict and competition is undermining the Constitution of Kenya, is committing an offense. Mutual respect, consultations, cooperation. Not talking at each other, undermining each other, undercutting each other. And this applies to independent oversight institutions which are represented here that oversee accountability for both levels of government. So that is the Constitution. It's not a matter of choice. It's not what is politically expedient. It's what the law of our country demands. So brothers and sisters, we are gathered here in that same spirit. And that's why we should make a lot of progress in the interest of the people of Kenya and in compliance with our constitutional order. Point number 2 is that the Constitution then goes on to say this executive exercise of executive authority, executive power of the state by the government of Kenya, shared between the two levels of government, has some functions which are exclusive to one level. You go to Schedule 4, Part 1 and Part 2. Some functions are exclusive to one level. Other functions have what we call concurrent jurisdiction. You know, there is a tendency to simplistically look at the functions in Schedule 4 to the Constitution, Part 1 on the national government, and Part 2 on county governments. And many people end their analysis there. But those who have looked at our Constitution carefully will tell you, some functions are exclusive in Part 1, others in Part 2. Other functions are concurrent. In fact, many functions, if not all, are concurrent. This is why even the devolved functions where exclusive power is given to county governments, the policy function on those functions rests with the national government. Okay? Look, all policy, even agriculture policy, policy on the other thing, or even the devolved functions, the policy function remains with the national government. And I'm not trying to create a hierarchy. I'm just this constitutional law 101. Because once we understand some of these things, some of the problems we have will disappear very easily. Okay? Because first we say the two levels should never compete with each other. They must respect each other and consult and agree and cooperate and move on, because we have only one government of the Republic of Kenya. It's only that the executive power and legislative power, those two arms of government, there are two levels. Judiciary, of course, is not devolved. Even for the devolved functions, the policy function on everything remains with the national government, so that you can have coherence. It's not to make counties look small, it's to have coherence, because you don't want to have one county saying, let's vaccinate livestock, and another county saying there is no need of vaccinating livestock because it's a project of Bill Gates. You don't want conflicting policy. Okay? Then finally, the Constitution goes on to say that even where functions are devolved, beyond the functions listed in Schedule 4, Part 1 and Part 2, if there is any other function that is not captured there, what we call residue jurisdiction, the Constitution says residue jurisdiction rests with the national government. Again, just to backstop the state so that there is no gap anywhere. If there is anything that was never captured, any governmental power that was not captured in Schedule 4, Part 1 or 2, then the national government takes responsibility. So having said that, I think we're in good space, ladies and gentlemen, and this is my final point, because we are already implementing our constitutional responsibilities in a very good way. I was just chatting with some of the colleagues here earlier on from both national government, county government, and we are saying some of the things here we are calling disputes and conflicts are very minor issues, inconsequential, and they are expected. Differences of opinion and interpretation of mandate, these are normal things. And I gave the example, I know countries which have had devolved systems for close to 200 years. Australia, for example, 185 years of devolution. Today, there is always tension, push and pull between the two houses of parliament when it comes to how much money remains in the center and how much goes to the counties. 185 years later. So we are doing so well. Number two, I was telling the same colleagues that seeing where we have come for the last 15 years, those of us who are in town, and I see many of you here who are in town with us in 2013, 2014, including Eden Duale, our CS for Health, who was my counterpart leader of the majority. He was the one, he was the House Majority Leader, I was the Senate Majority Leader, including my brother Mutahi were there. We were in town. counties, not because we want to claw back on their function, to make sure it succeeds. That's why, for example, the equipment program, we are not saying counties can either leaving each county to just look for its own equipment. Some counties will succeed, others may not succeed, others will succeed earlier than others, and therefore to avoid this, you have programs like the equipment program and other programs we are doing. Look at Taifa Care, for example. The political fight back and pushback against universal health care is real. Counties to fight this huge fight back alone. We in the national government are saying, let's take the flag. Okay? Let's take the flag. Because there are people here saying, oh, this thing cannot work, oh, there's a problem here. And then allow universal health to be successful across the country. Enough people, we make sure that there are drugs, we make sure there are equipment. Nobody has the capacity, even if they wanted, nobody has the capacity to roll back devolution. It is so strong. No one. On the agenda of the day. If there are any things that will not be quickly resolved, we will pack them and allow track 2 interventions between now and the next IBEC. Disbursements, I think we've done well. Just a month or so left. We might not give the June money before the financial year ends. We roll it over. We have a few other things around. We need to make a decision on county government additional allocations act legislation, because it is delaying absorption of development partner funds. We need to look at how we can cut down on that legislative period, which is quite lengthy, and it is affecting service delivery by county governments, and the other things that will be raised. But please don't worry. When you see differences of opinion, it's just normal, and we are doing extremely well. For a 15-year-old devolved system, we are in a perfect situation, because even very old devolved systems are still struggling. With consultations,
Hamjambo. Your Excellency, taking cue from you, I had a long speech here, but I'll just following the High Court ruling. 3, discuss and agree on the requirements for approval to withdraw by the control of budget, which has become a recurring issue. And Your Excellency, I appreciate also your wise decision to take this issue on the side, notwithstanding
and if possible, put a column on what could be the reason. What are the issues that have delayed implementation? Is it lack of attention? Is it, is it irreconcilable differences of opinion? Just let me know what the cause is, and then we will have a program of making sure by the time we close December, in the next 2 IBECs, we will clear all the unimplemented decisions. And the ones that are impossible to implement, we must note them as such and close them. And find some kind of closure, whatever that is. So having said that again, because we said this will be a short meeting, I want to make one last general comment. All those who are presenting here, from Minister Duale, Minister Mbadi, Controller of Budget, and all the others, take cue from what the first 2 speakers have done, just highlight. And nobody should take more than 10 minutes. Even if your presentation is 100 pages, if you cannot say it in 10 minutes, either you don't understand it, or you don't believe in it, or you're not prepared for the meeting, and we cannot allow you to come and prepare for this meeting here. All of us prepared before. So 10 minutes, and Eden Duale, because he's our timekeeper in cabinet, will be our timekeeper for IBEC. So you're structures to facilitate a seamless process for delivery of services to the people of Kenya. Executive authority of the government of Kenya is exercised at two levels. Executive authority of the government of Kenya, not the governments of Kenya. Executive authority of one government of Kenya is exercised in two levels: national level, national government level, and county governments level. So the Constitution goes on to say in Article 6(2) that this exercise of executive authority between the two levels, or by the two levels, will be processed, will be canvassed, will be executed through a process of mutual respect, consultations, and cooperation, not through conflict and competition. Yeah? Anybody perpetuating conflict and competition is undermining the Constitution of Kenya, is committing an offense. Mutual respect, consultations, cooperation. Not talking at each other, undermining each other, undercutting each other. And this applies to independent oversight institutions which are represented here that oversee accountability for both levels of government. So that is the Constitution. It's not a matter of choice. It's not what is politically expedient. It's what the law of our country demands. So brothers and sisters, we are gathered here in that same spirit. And that's why we should make a lot of progress in the interest of the people of Kenya and in compliance with our constitutional order. Point number 2 is that the Constitution then goes on to say this executive exercise of executive authority, executive power of the states by the government of Kenya, shared between the two levels of government, has some functions which are exclusive to one level. You go to Schedule 4, Part 1 and Part 2. Some functions are exclusive to one level. Other functions have what we call concurrent jurisdiction. You know, there is a tendency to simplistically look at the functions in Schedule 4 to the Constitution, Part 1 on the national government, and Part 2 on county governments. And many people end their analysis there. But those who have looked at our Constitution carefully will tell you, some functions are exclusive in Part 1, others in Part 2. Other functions are concurrent. In fact, many functions, if not all, are concurrent. This is why even the devolved functions, where exclusive power is given to county governments, the policy function on those functions rests with the national government. Okay? Look, all policy, even agriculture policy on the other thing, or even the devolved functions, the policy function remains with the national government. And I'm not trying to create a hierarchy. I'm just this constitutional law 101. Because once we understand some of these things, some of the problems we have will disappear very easily. Okay? Because first we say the two levels should never compete with each other. They must respect each other and consult and agree and cooperate and move on, because we have only one government of the Republic of Kenya. It's only that the executive power and legislative power, those two arms of government, there are two levels. Judiciary, of course, is not devolved. Even for the devolved functions, the policy function on everything remains with the national government, so that you can have coherence. It's not to make counties look small, it's to have coherence, because you don't want to have one county saying let's vaccinate livestock and another county saying there's no need of vaccinating livestock because it's a project of Bill Gates. You don't want conflicting policy. Okay? Then finally the Constitution goes on to say that even where functions are devolved, beyond the functions listed in Schedule 4, Part 1 and Part 2, if there is any other function that is not captured there, what we call residue jurisdiction, the Constitution says residue jurisdiction rests with the national government. Again, just to backstop the states, so that there is no gap anywhere. If there is anything that was never captured, any governmental power that was not captured in Schedule 4, Part 1 or 2, then the national government takes responsibility. So having said that, I think we're in good space, ladies and gentlemen. This is my final point, because we are already implementing our constitutional responsibilities in a very good way. I was just chatting with some of the colleagues here earlier on from both national government, county government, and we are saying some of the things we are calling disputes and conflicts are very minor issues, inconsequential, and they are expected. Differences of opinion and interpretation of mandate, these are normal things. And I gave the example, I know countries which have had devolved systems for close to 200 years. Australia, for example, 185 years of devolution. Today, there is always tension, push and pull between the two houses of parliament when it comes to how much money remains in the center and how much goes to the counties. 185 years later. So, we are doing so well. Number two, I was telling the same colleagues that seeing where we have come for the last 15 years, those of us who are in town, and I see many of you here who are in town with us in 2013, 2014, including Eden Duane, our CS for Health, who was my counterpart, leader of the majority. He was the one, he was the House Majority Leader, I was the Senate Majority Leader, including my brother Mutahi there. We were in town. counties, not because we want to claw back on their function, to make sure it succeeds. That's why, for example, the equipment program, we are not saying counties can leaving each county to just look for its own equipment. Some counties will succeed, others may not succeed, others will succeed earlier than others, and therefore to avoid this you have programs like the equipment program and other programs we are doing. Look at Taifa Care, for example. The political fight back and pushback against universal health care is real. Counties to fight this huge fight back alone. We in the national government are saying, let's take the flag. Okay? Let's take the flag. Because there are people who are saying, oh, this thing cannot work, oh, there's a problem here. And then allow universal health to be successful across the country. Enough people, we make sure that drugs, we make sure their equipment. Nobody has the capacity, even if they wanted, nobody has the capacity to roll back devolution. It is so strong. To the agenda of the day. If there are any things that will not be quickly resolved, we will park them and allow track 2 interventions between now and the next IBEC. Disbursements, I think we've done well. Just a month or so left. We might not give the June money before the financial year ends. We'll roll it over. We have a few other things around. We need to make a decision on the county government additional allocations act legislation because it is delaying absorption of development partner funds. We need to look at how we can cut down on that legislative period, which is quite lengthy, and it is affecting service delivery by county governments, and the other things that will be raised. But please don't worry. When you see differences of opinion, it's just normal, and we are doing extremely well. For a 15-year-old devolved system, we are in a perfect situation, because even very old devolved systems are still struggling. With consultations, structures to facilitate a seamless process for delivery of services to the people of Kenya. Executive authority of the government of Kenya is exercised at two levels. Executive authority of the government of Kenya, not the governments of Kenya. Executive authority of one government of Kenya is exercised in two levels: national level, national government level, and county governments level. So the Constitution goes on to say in Article 6(2) that this exercise of executive authority between the two levels, or by the two levels, will be processed, will be canvassed, will be executed through a process of mutual respect, consultations, and cooperation, not through conflict and competition. Yeah? Anybody perpetuating conflict and competition is undermining the Constitution of Kenya and is committing an offense. Mutual respect, consultations, cooperation. Not talking at each other, undermining each other, undercutting each other. And this applies to independent oversight institutions which are represented here that oversee accountability for both levels of government. So that is the Constitution. It's not a matter of choice. It's not what is politically expedient. It's what the law of our country demands. So brothers and sisters, we are gathered here in that same spirit. And that's why we should make a lot of progress in the interest of the people of Kenya and in compliance with our constitutional order. Point number 2 is that the Constitution then goes on to say this executive exercise of executive authority, executive power of the states by the government of Kenya, shared between the two levels of government, has some functions which are exclusive to one level. You go to Schedule 4, Part 1 and Part 2. Some functions are exclusive to one level. Other functions have what we call concurrent jurisdiction. You know, there is a tendency to simplistically look at the functions in Schedule 4 to the Constitution, Part 1 on the national government, and Part 2 on county governments. And many people end their analysis there. But those who have looked at our Constitution carefully will tell you, some functions are exclusive. in part 1, others in part 2. Other functions are concurrent. In fact, many functions, if not all, are concurrent. This is why even the devolved functions, where exclusive power is given to county government, the policy function on those functions rests with the national government. Okay? Look, all policy, even agriculture policy, policy on the other thing, or even the devolved functions, the policy function remains with the national government. And I'm not trying to create a hierarchy. I'm just this constitutional law 101. Because once we understand some of these things, some of the problems we have will disappear very easily. Okay? Because first we say the two levels should never compete with each other. They must respect each other and consult and agree and cooperate and move on. Because we have only one government of the Republic of Kenya. It's only that the executive power and legislative power, those two arms of government, there are two levels. Judiciary, of course, is not devolved. Even for the devolved functions, the policy function on everything remains with the national government, so that you can have coherence. It's not to make counties look small, it's to have coherence, because you don't want to have one county saying let's vaccinate livestock and another county saying there's no need of vaccinating livestock because it's a project of Bill Gates. You don't want conflicting policy. Okay? Then finally the Constitution goes on to say that even where functions are devolved, beyond the functions listed in Schedule 4, Part 1 and Part 2, if there is any other function that is not captured there, what we call residue jurisdiction, the Constitution says residue jurisdiction rests with the national government. Again, just to backstop the states so that there is no gap anywhere. If there is anything that was never captured, any governmental power that was not captured in Schedule 4, Part 1 or 2, then the national government takes responsibility. So having said that, I think we're in good space, ladies and gentlemen. This is my final point, because we are already implementing our constitutional responsibilities in a very good way. I was just chatting with some of the colleagues here earlier on from both national government, county government, and we are saying some of the things we are calling disputes and conflicts are very minor issues, inconsequential, and they are expected. Differences of opinion and interpretation of mandate, these are normal things. And I gave the example, I know countries which have had devolved systems for close to 200 years. Australia, for example, 185 years of devolution. Today, there is always tension, push and pull between the two houses of parliament when it comes to how much money remains in the center and how much goes to the counties. 185 years later. So, we are doing so well. Number two, I was telling the same colleagues that seeing where we have come for the last 15 years, those of us who are in town, and I see many of you here who are in town with us in 2013, 2014, including Eden Duane, our CS for Health, who was my counterpart, leader of the majority. He was the one, he was the House Majority Leader, I was the Senate Majority Leader, including my brother Mutahi there. We were in town. because we want to claw back on their function, to make sure it succeeds. That's why, for example, the equipment program, we are not saying counties can have a living each county to just